This is Beyond a Reasonable Doubt with your hosts, Mark Garrigus and Gary Smith.
Gary, how are you? Little bonus episode. It's been quite a week this week, huh?
Absolutely. Yeah, we went with the full hour a little early in the week, and I was a little disappointed. We missed some stuff, and then I realized, Mark and I, we'll catch it Beyond this weekend.
Well, exactly. So without further ado, since we want to jam pack a couple of things in here, what should we start with? What do you have queued up?
I say we start with the serious, and then we end on the fun. So
okay, let's do it.
So yeah, there's obviously a lot of stories that we're covering this week, but one of them that we're covering most closely is Kyle Rittenhouse, and there's been several developments in that case since we've had a chance to really speak about it in earnest. So why don't we go through that?
Yeah, first there was a juror who was taken off earlier this week for telling a Jacob Blake joke, I think, to one of the court staff.
I think it was to one of the bailiffs, and not a very good joke, by the way. I mean, weak.
And then the judge has been excoriated in some quarters for trying to explain the origins of hearsay and invoking a biblical passage, which is beyond me as to why somebody would excoriate him for that. I thought he makes it interesting. And he gives you some historical references so you can understand, if you're a lay person, where these things come from, and it's just not some kind of throw it up against the wall and makes no sense.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that that this is so politicized, because that judge has been wildly measured, in my opinion, and he is doing a good job of sort of slowing it down and explaining it for people who are like me, and maybe I would like to get it straight from his mouth as opposed to from a media outlet that's going to spin it the way they want to. I think he's doing a very reasonable job, but it is so charged that he will never be praised beyond this particular podcast, I doubt.
It's the trial lawyers that I talked to about this are just they scratch their head, so to speak, metaphorically speaking, at how the public reacts to some of these things. So
yeah. So do you want to go through?
Do we have any of the prosecution witnesses?
Well, we have a breakdown of it here. I decided not to pull video because it was just too hard to figure out how to isolate. Because, for instance, the first witness testified for nearly 3 hours. His name is Richard McGinnis, and he's a video producer for the Daily Caller. And he was on the ground that night in Kenosha, and he was closest to the first shooting. And in fact, he provided medical care, or attempted to provide medical care, to the first victim, whose name is Rosenbaum, in the moments immediately after the shooting. So he was boots on the ground. Kind of, that was the one where all of the video angles were obscured. So his testimony was very important, and he had some controversial things to say, depending on which side you're leaning on here.
If you're somebody who is looking at how to keep a scorecard on that witness, you had to wonder why the prosecution front-loaded with that witness, because by my calculation, he was not helpful to the prosecution.
Yeah, no, I didn't think so, and I thought the prosecutors made some missteps. At the end, he was trying to go back and forth with him, and he said it was impossible, something to the effect of, well, it's impossible for you to know what was happening as Rosenbaum lunged. And McGinnis replied, well, he said, fuck you, and reached for the weapon. If I'm a prosecutor, that's not the answer that I want coming out of my witness's mouth.
Yeah, and I think when jurors say to themselves, why did you put this guy on? Or why did you elicit that? Because it certainly set up a kind of a defense theme early on.
Right.
That it's self-defense. And he let it up with, the prosecutor let it up with this idea that, as you described it, you didn't ever meet him before. You weren't inside of his head. You didn't know what he was thinking. And it just set it up, I thought, amazingly for a retort by the witness. Then there was a second witness who said he was standing in close proximity to the accused.
Right. There was Ryan Balk who described Rittenhouse as a little under-equipped and a little under-experienced. And then the witness you're referring to is a former Marine rifleman named Jason Lakowski, I believe is how you pronounce it. He said he was standing with Rittenhouse in the moments leading up to the shooting. He was also armed with an AR-15. That guy was interesting. He described Rittenhouse as possibly being a little bit nervous, and he described his own philosophy for the night, which was a shoot, shove, show, shoot philosophy, meaning that if he was approached by an aggressive individual, his plan was to shout at them. If that didn't work, he was going to shove them away, then show them that he had a weapon, and finally, as a last resort, shoot. And he described that in his experience, there was nothing that night that led him to go past shout, which is the first of his 4 categories.
Yeah. And so it's just an interesting way to unfold, and obviously we'll deal again on Tuesday, because by the time we get to next Tuesday, we're going to have 2 more trial days of testimony.
Yeah, which is why we waited to do this on Saturday. We're really trying to give you guys the most up-to-date information we can. The other big development out of it, we had alluded to, I believe, on the main show that there was some infrared footage that was likely to be playing a role. We had seen portions of it at the time, and it was clear that it was aerial footage. I, at the time, thought it was drone footage, but it has since come out that it was from an FBI plane that was flying overhead. And it's a bit grainy, which makes sense for a plane versus a drone, because a plane's going to be a lot higher up. But that footage has started to come into play, and both sides basically seem to think that the infrared footage is their golden ticket. It seems they're both delighted by it, and it's hard to fathom, really.
And that harkens back to what we were talking about before, where the judge was getting a little heated about the fact that there was some footage that they claimed they didn't have, that the defense certainly believed they should have had, and the prosecution was taking the position that a state prosecutor, we don't control the feds, and there's nothing we can do, even though they had a fed on the stand.
One question I wanted to ask you, Mark, is as I have read more and more about this case in an attempt perfect. As I've read more and more about this case in an attempt to stay up to date, it started out with opening statements from the defense talking about Kyle testifying in a few days. And now every article I read quotes Wisconsin legal experts and defense attorneys saying, I don't know, I don't think you necessarily need to put him up there. There's all this video, which is highly unusual. The case is going in a direction that is possibly favorable for the defense. So what's the upside? Do you have a take on that?
Well, I will tell you that, and I've said this before, the decision to call your client, you can prep him all you want. The client's always anxious to tell their side of the story, but you never make that decision until after the prosecution rests, because you never know how the case is going to unfold. Now, I believe the defense front-loaded it in the opening statement and said that they were going to call him as a witness. One of the reasons you might do that, if you've got a good faith belief, is you then can tell his side of the story to the jury if you have an honest belief you're going to call him. Now, if the prosecution case disintegrates before your very eyes, then you've got a different situation. You can make the decision, as long as it was in good faith originally, to say, I'm not going to call the client. At this point, they haven't proven their case.
Now, until you prove otherwise, I'm going to assume that was your new business partner, Kanye West, calling, and I'm going to allow it because Kanye can do no wrong in my mind. All right, joking aside, actually not joking aside, to jokes. Let's harken back a little bit, Mark. Let's harken back to early in the pandemic when we came across a gentleman who had an unfortunate situation in court. And I'm just going to play it because it's hilarious and people deserve the refresher. So let's check this out.
Good morning, sir. What's your name?
Me?
Yeah, you. Yes.
Nathaniel Saxon, sir.
Your name's not Buttfucker3000, you yo-ho. Logging into my court with that as your screen name.
Why
We'll
would that?
discuss that in a little bit. What kind of idiot logs into court like that? What's your name again?
Nathaniel Saxton, sir, but I don't believe that I typed anything like that in.
Well, that's what it says.
Why?
We'll
I
discuss that in a
apologize.
bit.
That should not be.
Yeah, you should. I'll put you in the waiting room. You can sit in limbo for a while and think about what you call yourself online.
Now, that's just endlessly funny to me. He calls him a yo-hoo or a yo-ho. It's just, and then he just keeps going. And I love that judge. I love that guy. So then this
We've got
week,
another.
Yeah.
Gary, you did a wonderful job. We've got that's kind of like a Corolla classic, and now we're moving to the next spot.
Yeah. So here's a new one that I found this week that touched me equally. And for anyone who may have seen this before, I encourage you to focus on the gentleman in the red sweatshirt because he is having a hard time keeping it together. Here we go.
Okay. Are you driving right now?
Yeah.
You're suspended and you're in court. First of all, interrupting the court.
I'm not even driving. I'm parking somebody's car because they couldn't park. That's all I was doing. Hey, my car is a female car. Parking in the tight spot for it.
All right. I'm going to need you to park the car and get out of the car. Okay?
If you're having a bad day, just say that.
I'm not having a bad day until you started talking while driving at the same time that you're suspended.
Delightful. The guy calls from a moving vehicle.
You having a bad day, Judge?
Yeah. And Mark, I mean, what a country it is. Now this gentleman is trying to sell merch based on that saying. He's got a Shopify store up with sweatshirts and t-shirts that say, if you having a bad day, just say that. Wow. I have to respect the hustle. I mean, the guy's going viral. He's like, look, I'm going to make some money off this.
I'm going to make some money off
Now,
it.
he's going to get contempt, but, maybe I'll make $3,000. I kind of want to buy him his Christmas gifts for the Reasonable Doubt staff.
Oh, Gary, you made my day. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. It was great to see you.
I will see you on Tuesday.
All right, we'll see you then. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to Beyond a Reasonable Doubt. Stay tuned for more bonus episodes coming soon.